As I have said in previous devotions, I've been thinking about how the season of Eastertide speaks to our experience with the coronavirus. Maybe it doesn't, but I want my faith to be an integral part in how I respond, and I do hope that the Christian community may speak to our society as a whole. So these are the parallels that I see. The disciples were surprised, overwhelmed, and unsure of the resurrection. They didn't understand it in its fullness. They wondered what it truly meant. We were surprised, at least most of us, by the pandemic. We don't really understand the virus, what it means to society, or how to deal with it. We, like the disciples, are confined, perhaps fearful, searching for ways forward. Over the 50 days of Eastertide, Scripture describes how the group of disciples came to see in Jesus' death and resurrection a force that would change all of humanity. Christ would be the means of reconciliation between humans and God, would set in motion a radical change in the way of being in society, one in tune with the intention of the Creator, I think. But they were a small group. Many, probably most, didn't see. So it became their mission to bring this truth to the world. And as we know, it's been a rocky road, many rejections, much, much longer than expected, but it's still alive and transforming. Now, in no way is the spread of the coronavirus over our world a salvific event, but it has indeed played havoc with our lives, changed drastically the ways in which we relate to each other, our social structure. It has revealed truths about our society that we were unaware of or maybe ignored. It's caused various groups to see right action very differently. While threatening and confusing, it also has been transforming. This is the 5th week of Eastertide, the 50 days between the resurrection and Pentecost. As Scripture tells us, it is the time when Jesus appeared to the disciples resurrected. These stories are at the ends of the Gospels, and they are very different, but they all tell of the good news of Jesus. The story is continued, the story of what the disciples did with this is continued in the book of Acts. The 40th day of Eastertide, the church names the Feast of the Ascension. This year it's next Thursday, the 21st. 40, by the way, is a special number in the Jewish life. The Israelites were in the desert or in the wilderness 40 years before they got to the promised land. Jesus, we remember, spent 40 days in the wilderness before he began his ministry. 40 implies quite a while of preparing and a turning point. Now, most Protestants like me have little knowledge of or perhaps even interest in the ascension, but it is indeed a part of our Apostles' Creed that we often say. Jesus, quote, descended into hell, and on the 3rd day he rose from the dead. He ascended into heaven and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father Almighty, from whence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. The accounts of the ascension are different in all of the Gospels, but they do suggest in some way an experience of the resurrected Christ that changed. Jesus has been exalted, and Jesus has left. Now the disciples are charged with continuing the work he began. They, we are told, would be encouraged and led by the Spirit, which would come. They were being prepared to go out in the world. Without unduly pondering at this point on the theological implications of the ascension, I think it does say something to us about the time we were in as we begin to think about and determine how to, quote, go out again. Our life is changed. Our relationships are different. And I think just as the disciples contemplated how they would live, knowing a resurrected and ascended Jesus, we too possess that assurance and responsibility. As we prepare to go out, what changes are called for by our conviction that God in Jesus is bringing the world to its fruition, that is, living as God intended, reflecting the love that is at the heart of all. How will the church respond to what has been newly seen as we fight the pandemic? What are loving, neighborly things to do as we return to a, quote, more normal life? What would we do differently, and what will we go back to in the way we were? It's just a little over 2 weeks until Pentecost, the birthday of the church. And we all hope by the end of May, we too can begin to come out of our confinement. If we're not sufficiently safe by then, we will, of course, stay in longer. But the real question is, will we be prepared? How will we be open to the Spirit, the one that will guide, advocate, and comfort? Now is the time we can use to ponder. We can let Jesus lead us from fear to excitement and trust in what is to come. We can be in the presence of the ascended and exalted Christ in a new way. We can hear his call, his commission to go out into the world in ways that are particular to us today. Let us indeed use these days wisely. Blessings, and stay safe.